General Hospital will reveal exciting events in the next 2 weeks from June 2nd to 13th, 2025. First, as the first week of June descended upon Port Charles, a thick tension hung in the air, almost palpable with every passing hour. Willow, who had remained silent for too long, braced herself for a confrontation that could no longer be postponed. Her strained relationship with Sasha, now at the heart of a bitter custody battle, was about to unravel in a public courtroom where every secret, every lie, and every buried regret was about to be exposed. Meanwhile, Jason moved quietly through the shadows, gathering intelligence that hinted at a deeper, more dangerous plot beyond just family drama, a web of manipulation that could implicate far more than just those fighting for custody. Christina's return brought a brief moment of warmth and comfort, offering Michael a quiet reunion before he stepped into the fire. But any reprieve was short-lived. As Michael prepared to testify, he found himself haunted by the possibility that the court would uncover truths he wasn't ready to face, particularly the question of Sasha's pregnancy and his role in it. Nina, ever calculated and strategic, wasted no time in sharing what she knew with Rick, lighting the match that would ignite the courtroom. Carly, fiercely protective and unforgiving, turned on Jason, demanding to know why he had helped construct a lie about a fake father to shield Michael, and in doing so, had jeopardized the entire case. Sasha, already emotionally fragile, felt the walls closing in. Her trust, fractured beyond repair, made her vulnerable on the stand. Willow, fueled by Rick's counsel and her own bitterness, entered the courtroom with fire in her veins. But as Sasha spoke, her voice trembling, her words incomplete, Willow's determination gave way to confusion. She couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that Rick knew too much. And then it clicked, someone had fed him this information, someone close enough to unearth the secrets she thought were safe. That someone, inevitably, was Nina. With her conscience finally breaking through the mask of control, Nina confessed. In a hushed moment of rare vulnerability, she admitted to Willow that she had been the one to uncover the truth and feed it to Rick. Her motives weren't maternal or protective, they were punitive, designed to tear Michael apart and ensure Willow's downfall. But her truth, however cold and calculated, came too late to prevent the damage already done. The revelation cracked the fragile alliances inside the courtroom, pushing each player further into isolation. The courtroom quieted as the judge prepared to deliver the decision. Every heartbeat echoed in the silence as Michael, Willow, and Drew awaited a ruling that would define the future of Wiley and Amelia. Michael held his breath. Not as a confident father but as a man cornered by consequences. Willow, arms crossed tightly over her chest, looked not at the judge but at her children's empty seats, wondering what fate she had triggered. Drew remained calm, stoic, but the tightness in his jaw betrayed his anxiety. The gavel came down, and the words that followed reshaped their lives forever. Whatever the verdict, the emotional scars left behind would not heal easily. The courtroom may have decided the legal guardianship of the children, but the real damage stretched far beyond custody. Lies had been exposed, friendships severed, and illusions shattered. Wiley and Amelia, the innocent souls at the heart of the storm, would grow up not just with court orders but with memories of a family divided. And while Port Charles moved forward as it always did, the shadows of this battle would linger long after the judge's ruling faded from memory, a painful reminder that even love, when poisoned by betrayal, can destroy more than it protects. Second, while the courtroom battles escalated elsewhere in Port Charles, another storm began to brew quietly, far from the gavel's reach. Curtis and Portia, both still nursing wounds from past betrayals and unfinished business, redirected their energy toward a new target, Jacinda. Her sudden reappearance wasn't just a coincidence. It was a calculated move that signaled deeper intentions. For Curtis, the search for Jacinda wasn't just about uncovering her motives, it was about understanding why someone like her, once trusted, would now become a key figure in destabilizing Drew's already fragile standing. Portia, though cautious, stood firmly beside Curtis, determined to unravel the mystery that Jacinda embodied. Jacinda's role in neutralizing Drew was far from symbolic. Her actions had tangible consequences, and her presence reawakened a thread of deception tied to events long buried. Drew, blindsided by her betrayal, began to receive information that hinted at more than personal vendetta. This was orchestrated. The news he received, possibly connected to past intelligence deals or false financial leads, put him on edge. He had faced many adversaries, but the sting of betrayal from someone like Jacinda struck differently, reminding him that his enemies were often disguised as allies. Meanwhile, across town, Alexis found herself trapped in a dilemma of both law and loyalty. With $10 million mysteriously missing from Ace's inheritance fund, Laura began to press for answers. Alexis, known for her composure and sharp mind, now faced questions that struck at the foundation of her credibility. Laura's inquiries weren't hostile, but they were persistent, and each one dug deeper into a financial hole that Alexis hadn't even known she was standing in. The missing money wasn't just about numbers, it was about trust. And Laura intended to protect what remained of the Cassadine legacy with unflinching resolve. In the midst of the financial and familial chaos, Laura sought refuge in understanding. She reached out to Sonny, and together they exchanged concerns about the ever-expanding complications in Port Charles. From Joe's sudden emergence and its emotional impact on the Corinthos family, to the increasingly bitter custody battle involving Michael, Sonny found himself forced to face truths he had long tried to ignore. Laura, always the peacemaker, offered counsel. But even she couldn't deny that too many threads were beginning to unravel at once. Port Charles was no longer a city of small storms, it was becoming a hurricane. Amid all the upheaval, a surprising connection began to take root. Cody and Molly, two individuals from vastly different corners of the city, started to gravitate toward one another. What began as casual companionship gradually turned into something more intimate. Molly, still recovering from emotional wounds she rarely acknowledged, found solace in Cody's raw honesty and surprising gentleness. Cody, long dismissed by many as reckless or unreliable, saw in Molly a grounding force he hadn't realized he needed. As their conversations deepened, barriers fell away. And in an unguarded moment, perhaps at a stables or under the quiet dusk of a summer evening, the spark between them ignited into a kiss that neither had planned but both instantly understood. And so, as the city braced for the next wave of revelation and confrontation, these seemingly isolated stories intertwined further. Jacinda's betrayal, Drew's decline, Alexis's investigation, Laura's moral balancing act, Sonny's emotional reckoning, and the quiet stirrings of new love between Cody and Molly, all formed the intricate tapestry of Port Charles. A city where the past never truly stays buried, and where every whispered secret has the power to shake the present. Third, the tremors of long-buried secrets continued to ripple through Port Charles. And Dante found himself at the center of a storm that touched both past and present. As he sat with Rocco, trying to choose the right words, the gravity of his confession hung in the air. Telling Rocco that Gio was his half-brother was more than just delivering a truth, it was unraveling a complex web of silence, regret, and emotional landmines. For a boy already recovering from trauma, this revelation risked opening new wounds, yet Dante knew he owed Rocco honesty. What he didn't expect was the wave of consequences that would follow, especially from those who believed this truth should have remained buried. Lulu, having returned to a Port Charles that had evolved in her absence, suddenly found herself under scrutiny for a secret that had refused to stay hidden. Her role in the leak surrounding Joe's paternity placed her in a precarious position, especially with Brooke Lynn, whose protectiveness over her son had become fiercer than ever. Brooke Lynn's anger was immediate and raw, not only at the betrayal but at the emotional havoc it unleashed on Gio, who was still reeling from discovering who he really was. As tempers flared, what had once been a fragile truce between Lulu and Brooke Lynn shattered into open conflict, leaving both women on a collision course with unresolved history and maternal fury. Elsewhere in town, a quieter but equally consequential encounter unfolded. Jordan and Dalton, under the pretense of casual drinks, began to peel back the layers of one another. Their guarded conversation flirted with something deeper than mere interest. It was a cautious dance between two people with secrets and pasts that might one day intersect. Dalton, still an enigma to many in Port Charles, seemed to offer just enough vulnerability to keep Jordan curious. Though she couldn't shake the feeling that something more dangerous lurked beneath his calm exterior. And yet, despite the caution, a thread of mutual understanding began to form. One that could evolve into either an alliance or something far more combustible. Meanwhile, Anna remained relentless in her pursuit of the truth. Her latest interrogation target, Jack Brennan, proved more elusive than she'd anticipated. He played his cards close, but Anna, with years of espionage behind her, was well versed in the art of patience. She chipped away at his defenses, extracting small but vital details that hinted at a broader conspiracy involving the explosion at the penthouse and the attempted hit on Sunny in Los Angeles. Though Brennan denied direct involvement, Anna sensed the threads of a cover-up and grew more certain that powerful forces were orchestrating events from the shadows. Later, in a quiet and undisclosed location, Anna debriefed Jason, sharing everything she had learned from Brennan. Jason, already consumed by guilt and vengeance, listened carefully, his mind racing through potential suspects and connections. The pieces were slowly falling into place, and while the truth remained elusive, their combined efforts were drawing the net tighter around whoever had tried to erase Sunny. Each clue, each whispered threat, each coded message was no longer just a fragment, they were part of a larger, more sinister puzzle that could change everything. As night fell over Port Charles, the city buzzed with tension. Families were breaking apart and realigning. Truths once hidden in shadows were clawing their way into the light. And while Dante tried to rebuild trust with his son, while Brooke Lynn fought to protect hers, and while Anna and Jason inched closer to a buried enemy, everyone seemed to understand one thing: no one was truly safe. Not when the past had teeth and the future held fire. Fourth, at Elizabeth's home, a familiar silence was broken not by joy or reunion, but by the weight of revelation. She had seen many versions of Lucky over the years, the boy with dreams, the man broken by loss, the father haunted by absence, but the man who now stood before her carried something different. A burden too heavy to carry any longer. As she searched his face for answers, she could sense the internal war playing out behind his tired eyes. The tension hung in the room like a storm cloud ready to burst, and soon, it did. Lucky, struggling under the pressure of guilt and long-held silence, finally admitted the truth: he had tampered with Christina's car. What began as an impulsive act, a misguided attempt to influence circumstances from the shadows, had spiraled into a disaster far beyond his control. He had kept the secret buried, believing that the silence would protect everyone, including himself. But now, in Elizabeth's living room, that silence cracked open, exposing not just the act, but the shame and self-loathing that came with it. Her reaction, though restrained, mirrored the shock of a betrayal she hadn't seen coming. The confession unraveled Lucky even further. Alone later that evening, he wandered the streets of Port Charles with his hands deep in his pockets and the past echoing in his mind. He thought about Christina's close brush with death, the people who could have been hurt, and the way his actions had betrayed everything he once stood for. For a man who had once sworn to walk the path of truth and honor, the realization that he had become the architect of chaos was too much to ignore. In the quiet of the night, Lucky finally allowed himself to feel the full gravity of what he had done, and the man he had become. Back in town, whispers about Lucky's state of mind began to spread. Those closest to him speculated if this latest crisis would push him back into his old pattern of flight. For years, Lucky had wandered in and out of Port Charles, never fully committing. Never planting roots that could hold him in place. Some said it was in his blood, the Spencer curse of always needing to run. Others believed it was a defense mechanism, escape before being forced to face the pain head-on. But this time felt different. The damage was too deep, the scars too fresh. And the consequences too personal to ignore. Elizabeth, torn between compassion and disappointment, remained uncertain. She had always hoped that Lucky would one day find peace, perhaps not with her, but with himself. Yet every time he returned, the wounds reopened, and the fragile progress unraveled. She watched as he moved through the days like a ghost, avoiding eye contact, speaking in short sentences, and retreating further into himself. It was the behavior of a man standing on the edge of a decision that would either lead to redemption or another disappearing act. As the days passed, one question remained unanswered, hanging over the people of Port Charles like a question mark carved into the sky: would Lucky stay and confront the wreckage of his choices? Or would he once again vanish into the horizon, chasing redemption he never quite seemed to find? In a city where every secret eventually surfaces and every goodbye feels unfinished. The return of Lucky Spencer was never going to be simple, and his next move could be the most defining one of all. Finally, the week of June 9th to June 13th in Port Charles promises to be an emotional battlefield as the aftermath of the explosive courtroom clash between Willow and Michael spills into every corner of their lives. No matter who the judge ultimately sided with, the damage to their relationship is undeniable. What began as a custody dispute has now mutated into a web of betrayal, secrets, and wounded pride. For Willow, the emotional devastation doesn't stop with the verdict, it deepens with the shocking realization that Sasha is carrying Michael's child. A truth too raw to ignore. It shatters any illusion of trust she may have been clinging to and sends her spiraling toward confrontation. The inevitable showdown between Willow and Sasha looms large, with tension mounting. The question isn't whether it will happen, but how explosive it will be when it does. Sasha, caught in the middle of a conflict she never intended to ignite, finds herself isolated, but no longer passive. As Willow's rage intensifies, the possibility of Nina stepping in as mediator arises. Yet Nina's role in this drama is far from neutral. Her involvement in revealing Michael's paternity link to Sasha may have tilted the legal scales. But it has also drawn unwanted attention to her own secrets, especially her recent romantic entanglement with Drew. What was meant to be a power play could backfire spectacularly. Sasha, though wounded, is not without leverage. Her knowledge of Nina's private rendezvous with Drew is a ticking time bomb. If pushed too far, if she senses Nina has betrayed her in both the courtroom and personal life, she may retaliate by exposing Nina's hypocrisy. The cycle of revenge that has plagued Port Charles for generations threatens to begin anew, this time fueled not by ambition, but by heartbreak. Nina, always walking a delicate tightrope between redemption and manipulation, will need to tread carefully. One wrong move, one miscalculated word, and she could find herself losing not just Michael or Willow's respect, but the few bonds she still clings to. Elsewhere, Gio quietly faces a different kind of storm, one within himself. The revelation of his true parentage has shaken the foundation of his identity, leaving him adrift between the life he knew and the truth he never asked for. The weight of being a Quartermain, a Corinthos, and a Cerullo simultaneously is more than just a legacy, it's a burden of expectation, loyalty, and unanswered questions. As he wanders the halls of the Quartermain mansion or sits in silent reflection at Kelly's, the quiet support of Brooke Lynn, Dante, and Tracy becomes his lifeline. They offer steady presence without pressure, waiting for the moment he chooses to let them in. Joe's journey forward will not be defined by the people around him, but by the choices he makes. Whether he embraces the complexity of his heritage or rebels against it, he stands at a crossroads that will shape who he becomes. In a town defined by secrets and second chances, Joe's story may be the one that offers something rare, the possibility of self-forged identity, rather than one imposed by bloodlines. As the city churns with revelations and fallout, his quiet strength may become one of the few constants that give hope for something better. And so, as Port Charles braces for another wave of emotional reckoning, the week ahead will bring both rise and ruin. Loyalties will shift. Alliances will fray. Truths will be dragged into the light, some willingly, others clawed out by force. But amid the chaos, there will also be moments of resilience, small acts of kindness, of healing, of clarity. For in this town where the past is never truly past, and love and betrayal walk hand in hand, every sunrise brings another chance to choose differently. Whether they do, however, remains the question that only time, and the next week's events, can answer.